After a wild and eventful 3 days, the NFL draft in Green Bay is officially over. And as promised, we are here to bring you the 3 biggest winners of this year's draft and the 3 biggest losers of this year's draft. Some of these teams may surprise you. So we're not going to hesitate any further. We've waited long enough. The draft ended on Saturday. We're here on a Monday bringing you this analysis. We'll start in the winners category. We'll go through those 3, then the losers. They're in no specific order. We're not saying the biggest winner or the biggest loser, just 3 collectively. But in the winners group, we've got the New England Patriots. And I know some people might not want to hear that, right? But the Patriots, I thought, killed this draft. And to me, the Patriots have an opportunity to be this year's version of the Commanders. And I've been saying that for a while now. If you go back and look at last year, the Commanders had, the number 2 pick, new coach, weren't looking good, drafted Jaden Daniels, a rookie, and ended up making it to the NFC Championship game. I'm not saying the Patriots are going to make it to the AFC Championship game, but they're setting up for the same success. The Commanders drafted well last year. The Patriots this year drafted well. New head coach in Mike Vrabel. Young quarterback, not a rookie anymore, but in Drake May with a lot of upside. And if you look at what they did in this draft, they added Will Campbell with their first-round pick at number 4 overall. Immediately going to be a plug-and-play starter at left tackle. Massive for the Patriots, who have one of the worst offensive lines in the league. I think Campbell, if you watched his interview right after he got drafted, he's a guy that makes me want to run through a brick wall to play for him. He is truly passionate about the game, passionate about being in New England, and going to do everything and die trying, as he said, protecting Drake May. Then they went out and added Travion Henderson, the second-round running back out of Ohio State, a guy who will be phenomenal, not just as a running back, but the Patriots want a guy who could be a pass-catching back. Henderson can be that guy. Then I thought they got a steal in the 3rd round, adding Kyle Williams from Washington State. He's not huge in terms of his size, but he's got great hands, great speed, and the yards after the catch, phenomenal. And that's what the Patriots need. They needed some more help at wide receiver. Sure, Stephon Diggs was good, had a couple of young playmakers that could make a run this year, but Kyle Williams is going to be a guy who could surprise a lot of people, and getting him in the 3rd round was massive for New England. Then I thought in the 5th round, getting Braden Swinson out of LSU, a guy who had 8.5 sacks last year, was a steal to continue to reinforce what's going to be a strong defense. The Patriots loaded up on defense in the free agency period, added a few pieces in this draft, none bigger in my opinion than Swinson, again, in the 5th round. So a 5th round steal, some more offensive playmakers to help Drake May, some more protection for Drake May, and actually a competent football coach now in Mike Vrabel. Things are looking up in New England. Again, not saying they're going to be a playoff team necessarily, not saying they're going to make an AFC Championship run, but they drafted extremely well. They handled free agency extremely well. There's a lot more to be excited about in New England this year than there has been in the last few years. Another winner, give me the Packers. Give me the Packers, not just for the hosting job they did. I mean, Green Bay was phenomenal. The crowd was electric. The setup was electric. It was a phenomenal venue. An environment for this year's NFL draft. For me, one of the best environments that I've seen regarding an NFL draft. Pittsburgh has a lot to live up to and some big shoes to fill when they host next year. But Packers did great there. They also did great in their draft. From adding Matthew Golden in the 1st round, becoming the first-round wide receiver the Packers have drafted since 2002. To me, that was a steal, getting him that late in the 1st round. I thought maybe the Cowboys might take him after Tataroa McMillan got drafted in the top 10, but allowing him to move that far down, not having to trade up for him or anything was huge, and gives Jordan Love another speedy receiver option, an area that the Packers desperately needed help in. There's some more pass catchers. They did the same thing in the 3rd round, adding Savion Williams in the 3rd round, another wide receiver option, but a guy who could also be a steal and a playmaker in special teams as well. So 2 pass-catching, speedy wide receivers that can play everywhere for the Packers within the first 3 rounds. Baron Sorrell in the 4th round I thought was a great pick. Guy who had 40 pressures and 10 run stops last year, only behind James Pierce, by the way. And then Colin Oliver at linebacker in the 5th round. No one's talking enough about that. Really, really good out of Oklahoma State. Thought that was a fantastic pickup for the Packers to continue to reinforce some help on defense. The only area where I thought they could have been better was drafting more cornerback help. They needed more help in the secondary. They only drafted 1 cornerback, Micah Robinson, in the 7th round. So they really didn't address that need throughout the draft at all. But they addressed the need for their franchise quarterback in Jordan Love, finally getting him some more help. A big-time win for them and an additional win for the hosting job. And the 3rd winner, we talked about them last Friday. Winners of the 1st round, Colts. Give me the Colts. Getting Tyler Warren at number 14 was an absolute steal. We knew the Colts were going to go tight end, but again, we were afraid that they might not get their guy. Maybe the Jets were going to take him. Maybe the Bears were going to take him. Well, the Bears went with Colston Loveland, leaving Tyler Warren there for the taking, and the Colts didn't have to trade up. They didn't have to give up anything for what, for me, was the best tight end in this class. Remember, the Colts tight ends last year only had 39 catches for 467 yards. Tyler Warren had 700 yards after the catch last year. So he is a phenomenal pickup for Indianapolis. Gives him an immediate playmaker across the board. Then they added JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State in the second round, a guy who had 12 sacks last year. The Colts were 31st in the league in terms of pressure rate. So you've got a great guy out of Ohio State who can create immediate pressure in the second round. So offensive playmaker, a defensive playmaker. Justin Wally out of Minnesota at cornerback, very underrated. And so is DJ Giddens in the 5th round, a guy who rushed for at least 1,200 yards in each of the last 2 years. Can also be a good pass-catching back as well. Very, very fast. So the Colts adding some offensive playmakers, reinforcing that defense as well, really hit at every level they needed. They just got to find themselves a quarterback. I don't really have a lot of faith in Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, but regardless, even if they don't have either of those quarterbacks next year, they have set up their team for success for whoever could be that franchise guy in the future. So I thought the Colts did a phenomenal job drafting, and to me are one of the biggest winners from this last weekend. Now we go to the negative side. We'll go to the negative side. And again, this is not to say there weren't other winners. This is not to say there weren't other losers. These are just the ones that stood out the most to me. One of the biggest losers from this week's NFL draft was the Dallas Cowboys. If I'm a Cowboys fan right now, I don't feel very excited or optimistic about this upcoming season. The Giants did extremely well in this draft. The Eagles are the reigning Super Bowl champions, and the Commanders were a win away from playing in the Super Bowl. You arguably could say the Cowboys could be the worst team in the NFC East. And I know it's saying a lot considering how bad the Giants are, but there's potential there, and they've got themselves a Super Bowl winning quarterback in Russell Wilson. The Cowboys didn't do well in this draft. We talked so much about how the Cowboys needed help at wide receiver to go opposite of CeeDee Lamb. And what did the Cowboys do? They didn't draft a single wide receiver. We thought they might go Teteroa McMillan, and I think if he had still been on the board at number 12, the Cowboys would have taken him. But they weren't aggressive enough. McMillan went off the board early to the Panthers. The Cowboys in the first round went with Tyler Booker, the guard out of Alabama, with number 12. Fine pick. A great offensive lineman. You need an offensive line to win games and to give your quarterback some protection. It's fine. I'm not that upset with that pick if I'm Dallas. But after that, they didn't do anything. Added some help on defense, sure, but instead of drafting a wide receiver at any point in this draft, they drafted 2 more running backs. 2 more running backs in Jaden Blue and Phil Maffa in the 5th and the 7th round. They already had Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. So again, you drafted 2 extra running backs that you really don't need. You don't get any sort of wide receiver help. Add a few decent defensive pieces here and there, and your first round pick was a guy on the offensive line, which again, you need. But again, there's nothing there to be excited about. Factor in a mediocre quarterback in Dak Prescott and a coaching hire that was really, really bad. There's nothing to be excited about down at the Big D. Dallas is not looking good. To me, one of the biggest losers from this draft. The Steelers can also say the same thing. I look at the Steelers and I wonder, do they believe they're going to get Aaron Rodgers? Is Aaron Rodgers going to make up his mind in the middle of July and say, okay, I'll come play for the Steelers? Because if he doesn't do that, the Steelers are in a really bad spot. For years, they have had a horrendous offense. They have not had an offense anywhere close enough to being in a point where they can compete for Super Bowls. Great, congratulations. Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season. Great, they're making the playoffs, barely, but everybody knows that when the Steelers make the playoffs, at least the last few years, they're going to get destroyed by whoever it's against, whether it's the Ravens or the Bills or the Chiefs, who they've lost to these last few years. They don't have the offense to compete with those teams, and elite defenses can only get you so far. So the Steelers' defenses have been good, and they reinforced that defense with their first-round pick, taking Derek Harmon at number 21, guy who had 34 pressures last year. He's phenomenal, right? He's really, really good. But they only drafted 2 offensive playmakers. They drafted Caleb Johnson out of Iowa at running back in the 3rd round, and then Will Howard at quarterback from Ohio State in the 6th round. Will Howard's not going to be your starting quarterback. He's not going to be your future either. So right now, the starting quarterback for the Steelers is Mason Rudolph. He's not a guy that's going to lead you to the playoffs, and if he does, he ain't going to win a playoff game. No way. It's not going to happen. They've got DK Metcalf at wide receiver. That's great, but they have no one to throw to him. So the Steelers, again, the defense is great. The defense has been great. They needed offensive help. They needed more playmakers. They needed a quarterback. And at number 21, they passed on Jackson Dart, who later got taken by the Giants after trading back in. They passed on Shedeur Sanders, which I don't blame them, but they did pass on him multiple times. They passed on Dylan Gabriel. They passed on Jalen Milroe. A lot of other quarterbacks there they didn't take, and that's fine if the Steelers didn't want to do that. But if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, this is not going to be a successful season for them, and this was not a draft that if I'm a Steeler fan, I'm looking at and feeling very pleased with. And then finally, one of the Steelers' biggest rivals in the same division, the Bengals, to me, were a loser in this draft. We know the offense is looking fine. You've got Joe Burrow, and they signed T. Higgins and Jamar Chase to massive extensions. That's great. You needed to do that. The defense was the biggest issue. We talked about the Bengals. They want help on the offensive line, and they need help on defense. They allowed over 25 points per game last year. The defense was the reason that the Bengals probably failed to make the playoffs. The offense did so many good things, lighting up the scoreboard. The defense can never get their stops, right? They had a major reach in the first round. 17th overall pick, they go Shamar Stewart. Yeah, they addressed that defensive need, sure. This is a guy that had 4.5 sacks in his collegiate career. Not just last year, his entire career, only 4.5 sacks as an edge rusher, and the Bengals took him in the top 20. I think that's a bit of a reach. Maybe they think they can develop him. Maybe they see some talent and potential they can unlock in Cincinnati. But I do think it's a bit of a stretch considering there were other, better defensive players and better edge rushers they could have taken that early in the draft. The Bengals only had 6 picks the entire draft, and arguably the best pick they had was their last in the 6th round, getting Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech at running back, a guy who rushed for over 1,500 yards each of the last 2 years. I think he's a phenomenal running back, one of the more underrated backs, could be a very solid guy over the next few years in Cincinnati, both as a running back and as a pass-catching back as well. It's another weapon for Joe Burrow. But outside of that, you got the Trey Hendrickson guy who's trying to get out of there with a trade. They thought they could replace him maybe with Shamar Stewart. Not a good pick. They didn't really have any other defensive talent they added. If I'm a Bengals fan, I'm pumped about our offense, absolutely. If I'm looking at the defense, I'm thinking we didn't really get that much better, and we didn't really have a great draft all the way around compared to some of the other teams, not just in our division, but also in the league as a whole. So there you go, guys. 3 winners, 3 losers from this year's NFL Draft. Patriots, Packers, Colts, biggest winners for us. Cowboys, Steelers, Bengals, biggest losers for us. Again, plenty of other teams that could fit the molds for both of these. We just wanted to hit on 3 each. Leave your thoughts down below, though. Did your team win the draft? Did your team pick well? Are you excited about your team? Are you upset? We want to hear from you. The season's going to be here before we know it. We're going to get to see some of these rookies starting in preseason play in just a couple months. July 31st, the first preseason game. So it's going to be here before we know it. We're going to see if these teams really won or really lost. But until then, please continue to like, comment, subscribe, share our videos, and check out everything down in the description below. That includes our website, thegridironexpert.com, home to our expert picks and our newsletters. All of those coming back very, very soon. We want you to take advantage of those, guys. We want you to hit that notification button so you don't miss out on any of our future videos and future content, so you can become a member of our GE Nation. And once again, as always, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.
Yeah.